Hello and welcome to Inside Germany. My guest today is a legend of the underground music scene here in Berlin who arrived from Manchester in northern England way back in 1978 when this city was divided by its notorious wall. That didn't deter musician and record producer Mark Reeder, who managed to organise the first secret punk rock concert in communist East Berlin, and he got away with it. However, he was soon labelled subversive by the Stasi, the East German secret police, but he's here to tell that tale and hopefully many more. A man so well connected in the music business, his telephone book no doubt makes it interesting reading. You've also got a brand new album out, hot off the press. In fact, they're still warm, I can feel them, which we'll be giving away a couple of copies, signed copies of these, later in the programme. Welcome to the show. I wanted to ask you, first of all, I worked it out, if my maths is correct, that you came to Germany when you were still a teenager, back in 1978, with no German. You didn't speak German at all. So what was the incentive to suddenly up sticks from good old Manchester?
Well, if you've ever been to Manchester in 1970s, you'd have probably understood me a bit better. But I came here. I'd been to Germany in the 70s, in 76, first time I was about 18. And I just kind of liked the idea that it was something a bit different to what I'd been used to in Manchester. And I just decided I'd come and just see what Berlin was about. You know, I'd travelled a bit around West Germany and then decided to take the train to Berlin, which I got a train as far as like Hanover or someplace like that, and missed the connection. And I was standing in the pouring rain thinking to myself, like, oh, how do I get to Berlin now? It was quite late at night. And the guy on the platform just said, well, right, take the regional train and then get off and just walk to the border and you can hitchhike to Berlin, which is exactly what I did. Really?
Because this, we should explain, Berlin was sort of this island in the middle of communist East Germany.
Yeah.
And what, you went to the border...
I walked to the border.
Walked to the border and got a lift in a West German car, it has to be said, because
some student guy was just on his way to Berlin. All the cars going from West Germany were going to Berlin.
Yeah.
So
because there were only 3 roads through.
And it was desolate, and I had no idea what I was really doing. I just decided I'd try this out, you know. So on the suggestion that you can just get a car to Berlin, so I did.
Yeah. But did you also come because of the music here?
Well, yeah, it was mainly one of the things, not because of the music here. I was interested in German electronic music. I'd been kind of infected as a teenager listening to things like Tangerine Dream and Klaus Schulze and things like this.
And Kraftwerk.
Yeah, Kraftwerk, definitely, you know. And also, I've been working in Virgin Records in this tiny little record shop in Manchester. This was before the Richard Branson boom of mega stores and things. It was a small record shop. I worked there as a kind of part-timer. And eventually got a proper job there, and I worked there for a while. And always looking at these imports from Germany, they're always like good quality pressings, great, you know, like sounding records. I thought, you know, it's a very different kind of mindset to what we had in the UK, and I was quite interested in expanding my knowledge on this electronic music stuff. And I just decided I'd go and check it out myself. That's why I initially went to Germany in the first place, to try to find out if I could find records that were not available in the record shop in Manchester. That I couldn't get on him.
It's a long way to come to get certain records. But when you got here, I get the impression, here we are in this little island of capitalism, if you like, in West Berlin, but freedom. But you seem to be more interested in the East. Well, over the wall, as it were.
Well, the thing is, nobody could tell me anything about Berlin at all. In Manchester, certainly not. No one knew anything about Berlin apart from that we bombed it to bits and that it was like this city which was surrounded by a wall, and everyone was apparently depressed here. And the fact that most people actually thought that Germany was like this and it was divided in the middle, and Berlin kind of separated both sides, east and west. You know, they didn't realise that Berlin was actually in the middle of East Germany. Most people. Some people thought it was like North and South Berlin, you know. So I thought, I'll check it out for myself, you know, and find out what was going on here myself. And just went and came and found that it was a completely different place altogether. But all the Berliners that I met, in the first couple of days that I met people on the street, nobody could tell me anything about East Berlin really at all. They were all kind of really negative. And I thought, well, I'll have to go and check it out for myself. And people they wouldn't even tell me, oh, you can go to Checkpoint Charlie. You know, I found that out by meeting a West German who'd actually stopped me to ask me where the Brandenburg Gate was. And then we got talking, and he was, oh, you can go over Checkpoint Charlie. So I went to Checkpoint Charlie and went over to East Berlin. I was like...
Yeah, this was the Allied checkpoint, wasn't it? Where we had to go through as foreigners. Yeah,
yeah, we couldn't go. We could go over Friedrichstrasse, which I didn't know at that time, or Checkpoint Charlie. Now, Checkpoint Charlie back then looked like a petrol station without petrol pumps. You know, it was like this zigzag, like little walkway which was cordoned off and all these barriers, and I kind of like, well, this is very strange. You get in this like cubicle, and it's all these like potted plants. In like Formica potted plants and pictures of like Brandenburg and Magdeburg painted in the 18th century on the walls. Kind of, you know, it was all kind of wallpapery and kind of like tried to make look like kind of homely when you got into this kind of like control point. And some guy sitting there in the East German border guard smoking a cigarette and looking at his passport. You know, like, you know, what are you doing here? You know?
Yeah.
I thought it was very, very weird. And getting to East Berlin, and it was completely different.
I wanted to show this picture because this is in East Berlin. This is actually at the first May Day celebrations. And I don't know whether you can really see him, but that's Honecker there, isn't it? Isn't it?
Directly in the middle is Erich Honecker and Willy Stolf. And I'd gone to this parade to see it, you know, see the May Day parade. And I thought...
And with your camera?
And I went with a camera.
Yeah, I mean, this is...
Yeah. And I thought, oh, I saw all these people just kind of walking along, and I thought, oh, I'll just go and have a walk, you know, I'll see what it's like to walk in the May Day parade in East Berlin. And I got in this parade and started walking. And at that time, I didn't realise that it was all organised, that all these people who were actually participating, it was all organised in some way by kind of like the companies that they worked for, like the factories that they'd worked for, organised all the families to go along and wave carnations and support, you know, the SED. And I just kind of walked in there and I thought, oh, I'm getting close to Erich Honecker, I'll take a photograph, you know. And I put my camera up to take the photograph, and just as I pressed the shutter, that's why the photograph's a little bit blurred, I was grabbed from, like, all sides. I didn't realise at the time, but as I'd entered this parade, immediately I'd been surrounded by Stasi blokes in leather jackets and moustaches, you know, and they just grabbed me and just hauled me off and kind of interrogated me for, like, half an hour, you know, what are you doing, where have you come from, you know. Going through my passport, and I was like, oh dear, I'm going to get put into a
But it didn't put you off?
Oh no, I thought it was quite enthralling, you know, it was quite exciting.
Well, you've got lots of stories. Let's find out more, though, now. The other day, Mark took us on a nostalgic journey around his Berlin.
It's a lovely, quiet Sunday morning, and I'm going to take you to a few places that have been important to me in Berlin over the last couple of decades. So come with me and I'll take you there. I came to Berlin in 1978. One of the first places I came to was the Brandenburg Gate, and it looked very different back then. There was a lovely little wall around it, separating east from west. It was nothing like I'd imagined the Berlin Wall to be, in fact. I thought it was going to be this huge, like, you know, 16-foot brick wall made out of red bricks, and when I got to see it, I was quite, wow, it looks really flash. This photograph that I hold in my hand, it's a picture of me trying to escape to East Berlin. We're standing here in Kreuzberg. Behind me is the legendary SO36 club, which was the place where I first played in Berlin with a band. I had no idea what I was going to do. And a friend of mine, Alistair, he called me just to see if I wanted to go out for a drink. And I said to him, hey, Alistair, can you sing? And he went, Strangers in the Night. And I went, brilliant, we've got a gig next Wednesday. We were called by a journalist, Die Unbekannten Engländer, which became shortened to the Unbekannten, which actually means the unknown. We went to buy some beer so we could drink some liquid courage, and then we came to play in this place. I'm standing in front of the Gemeindehaus of the Erlöserkirche in Rummelsburg, which is in East Berlin, the Toten Hosen, a punk band from West Germany, played the first gig by a Western group here in East Berlin in 1982. We invited only 100 people, very, very close friends. And everyone was so excited because this was, you know, they admired the band. They already knew the music by the band. They'd heard it on the radio, so they already knew who they were. But to actually see them perform in their own country, you know, something which was illegal, and we all knew it was really highly illegal. It meant so much more than just a normal gig in a normal club anywhere in the world, and especially for these kids, because we managed to bring someone from the West to them, because they couldn't come to see us in the West. They were not allowed to leave East Germany. It brought tears to my eyes. I honestly, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I couldn't believe that we actually pulled it off and got away with doing this gig without the authorities finding out. Well, this is the only place on our little tour that hasn't changed at all. This is the Tresor, or this is the place which used to be the Tresor. Unfortunately, they tore it down a couple of years back. The Tresor was one of Berlin's most famous techno clubs of the 90s. Everyone and everybody who was in a techno DJ wanted to play there because it gave them a status. In this area, anything goes, you know. There were no rules, there were no regulations, there were no policing in the early 90s. It was a very unique club and a really, really great place to go out to. And there's nothing going to be like it ever again.
There's nothing going to be like it ever again. I'll pick you up on that a little later. Mark Reeder's my guest. I didn't actually ask you, I said you're a musician and producer, but when you came to Berlin, how did you get into the music scene?
Well, I'd been designated the Factory Records German representative by Rob Gretton and Tony Wilson, who just started this record label. And
in Manchester?
In Manchester.
Yeah. With Joy Division?
Yeah, it was basically for them, really, and I knew them anyway, so it was like, they were my mates, and it was... well, you're in Germany now. Can you promote our records in Germany? Would you be prepared to do this? I was like, okay.
So they could put on their things Berlin.
Yeah. Well, Tony told me years later the only reason why he wanted it because he wanted to have on the letterhead Manchester, New York, Brussels, Berlin, because it looked good on paper. So I thought, okay. Yeah. But you know, I just did the promotion for them really at the beginning, and it kind of opened up a lot of doors. I think a lot of people thought that maybe some association with me would maybe get them a record deal with Factory or something like that. I don't know. Well,
is that how you met Toten Hosen? Because we should explain Toten Hosen, maybe not when... I'm going to ask you about this gig in the East. Maybe they weren't... They're huge. I mean, they're a stadium band today, aren't they? And they have been for quite a time.
Yeah, yeah. Back then, they were just starting, really. It was like one of the earlier gigs. They'd all done really a handful of gigs. I kind of met them by the singer. I was at the time managing, and I was the sound engineer for a group called Malaria. Yeah, Malaria was like an avant-garde girl group, Gudrun Guts and Bettina Custer's band, and we'd done this festival kind of concert in Bochum with Neubauten and Andreas Doro, and my driver was Campino, the singer of Toten Hosen.
No.
And he was talking about this new band that he had, and you know, they were looking, you know, playing gigs and stuff, and they were looking forward to what were they going to do. Yes, the Toten Hosen means the dead trousers. Yeah, and these trousers, they bought in a shop in, like, you could buy per kilo, like 16 kilos of trousers for, like, about £1 or something. Horrible, hideous flares from India. And Andy, the bass player, he kind of registered himself at my flat so that he could escape going to the German army, and he would then load up all these trousers in my flat. Oh, anyway, so I kind of got into this Toten Hosen thing now. I became their sound engineer at that point.
But how did you get the gig in East Berlin? How did you do that? In that, you were saying earlier, going through Friedrichstrasse, this is the underground station, or through Checkpoint Charlie, but how did you get all over there with guitars, equipment?
Nothing like that. It was nothing like that. People, you know...
Because they're all punks and strange looking. I mean, here's the photo. I mean, we saw the photo briefly in the report, but there's a motley crew.
Well, the two girls at the front of the photograph, they were my East German contacts. They were girls that I'd met I'd met when I first got to East Berlin, I met this punky-looking kid on the underground, and I asked him, is there any place here where there are any underground events happening? And at that time, I didn't know he was from the Stasi, but actually he was an inoffizieller Mitarbeiter, you know, he's an informer. But he passed on I gave him my address, and I said, if you hear of any gigs or anything, just call me, you know, just write me a postcard. And months later, I get a postcard from one of these girls saying, come and meet me in East Berlin. So I met her and we got chatting.
And these girls weren't from the secret police?
Not really, no. They were just friends of his. And he kind of passed on this information because he knew they liked this. I think that the idea was to get me to come over, to sound me out, really. Yeah. And they were John Peel fans. They were really, like, obsessed by his show because it kind of gave them something which you couldn't get in East Germany, which was freedom of thought, you know, freedom of choice.
Which they most probably heard on BFBS.
BFBS and the British World Service.
Yeah, because I used to work for them.
And so they would religiously record every show that he made, actually, and they were kind of interested in what was going on in West Berlin and in England and things, and meeting a real English person and stuff was for them quite a thrill. Over the years, you know, like then a couple of years later, when I started to work with Toten Hosen, I met this hippie in a bar who told me about this so-called blues messe, as they put it, which is like a blues mass that they held in a church every other Sunday. I was like, what's that? He goes, yeah, I've got a guitar, an electric guitar. Well, in East Germany, you couldn't just buy an electric guitar in a shop and play it, right? But he had acquired an electric guitar and he played, you know, Bob Dylan songs or whatever in this church. And I thought, I wonder if it's possible to kind of like expand this theory and this idea of playing and get a band to play instead. And we went to see the priest at the church. And
I see, this is before that. You got the permission from the
priest? And I said, well, would it be possible if a band came over to play, would they be able to play? And he's like, well, you know, possibly. And so we kind of worked around this kind of idea of like, OK, we need to get some instruments because the band obviously can't bring their own instruments into East Berlin. We'll have to acquire some instruments. And so there's a few bands like these girls knew, like Planlos and Feeling B, and they all had an amp and a guitar and a bass and stuff. And we eventually got all the bits and pieces together, and then we did this gig.
And how many people were at the...
Well, we invited 100 people.
And that was it? And
that was it, yeah.
And you got away with it? I mean, I said earlier you were named as subversive by the East German secret police, but it wasn't because of that incident. But that concert is actually a sort of legendary moment because it was the first ever concert by such a band. By
a Western punk. I mean, obviously in East Berlin and East Germany they had, like, you know, Boney M performing on telly. They had Western groups performing in East Germany before, in East Berlin. But punk didn't exist officially in East Germany, simply for the reason punk was regarded as being something which was a failing of capitalism. You know, through capitalism you had punk rock, unemployment and things. And in East Germany, being the Arbeiter- and Bauernstadt, you know, the worker and farmer state, they didn't have unemployment, therefore they didn't have punk rock. So to bring a West German punk rock band into East Berlin and infiltrate them into their society, that was deemed something quite radical. Although at the time we didn't know that amongst the kids that had been invited, there were a couple of Stasis as well, you know, like informers. But they hadn't informed on the gig prior to the gig because they wanted to see the gig. So they decided they'd tell us after the event. And like in '88, we repeated a gig with...
And this is just before the wall came down.
Yeah, we did with a group called Division. They put on a concert for orphans in Romania, Romanian orphans. That was the disguise for this concert, and so we did another gig like.
And then of course the wall fell down, and you weren't here in Berlin, I believe, when the wall fell down.
No.
But I want to move on to sort of what you said at the end of that last report. You said about Tresor, this famous club. There's nothing going to be like it ever again. I mean, do you think... I mentioned this because of the Rolling Stone article a few months ago, which I'm sure you know about, where it said Berlin, it's over. Berlin is over. It's not the cool city anymore. Just a quick answer. We've got a report coming up, but a quick answer. Do you think Berlin's still cool, yes or no?
I think Berlin's still cool. It's an ever-growing coolness, Berlin. It attracts out all different kinds of people to Berlin for different reasons, but Berlin's always been a cool place and always will be, I think. I think that the fact that the Tresor will never be the same, the idea of having such a place will never be the same again, because there's too many rules and regulations now as before you didn't have those, you know. That's what I mean by that.
Health and safety, we won't go there at the moment. But OK, our reporters went out and about asking the very same question, is Berlin cool or not? Let's see what others think, and we'll talk some more in a minute.
A typical weeknight in Berlin. People dance and drink until the wee hours in clubs like Sage. It's a lot of activity for a city that's lost its title as the capital of cool. Or is the entire debate nothing more than a diversion?
The things that made Berlin hip are still here. Some people say, who needs Berlin? But I say, don't believe everything you hear. Put down your newspaper, come here and see for yourself.
The many millions of tourists who visit Berlin each year do just that. Their number is growing, and so is the number of people who live here.
Berlin's the coolest and most relaxed city in Europe.
In Berlin, you can dive into a bunch of different worlds and cultures.
I
like the freedom you have here.
You can be anything you want here.
It's always changing. It's a permanent Baustelle.
Baustelle, that's German for construction site. And it's true, Berlin is still changing. Some mainstays of the counterculture have closed while others take their place. Berlin's hipster reputation also owes something to its thriving contemporary art scene. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, the city has become home to about 440 galleries, more than any other European city. An exhibition in Berlin is a feather in the cap of any artist.
Every generation reinvents Berlin and creates a new city in its own image. That's what makes living here so fabulous. Every 5 or 6 years, Berlin reinvents itself and you have an entirely new city to discover.
Berlin has hundreds of museums and monuments. It also boasts 150 theaters and stages in every genre and about 12,000 restaurants, cafes, and ice cream parlors. And then there's the nightlife. The techno club Berghain and the Watergate are on many a must-see list. In the 1990s, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, clubs and bars expanded into the reunified city's many empty spaces. Like the techno club Tresor, housed in a former department store. Today there are fewer unused spaces and everything is more regulated. But Berlin remains a city teeming with possibility.
There are still many undiscovered spots in the city with free spaces for new projects. As long as that's still true, people will flock here and try to make their dreams a reality. This is still a wild and edgy place to be.
And there you have it. After one day and one night, we have our answer. Berlin still seems to be the capital of cool.
And Mark Reeder thinks it is as well.
Certainly.
Yeah.
It's a, it's a place where you can... It's always been that, really, Berlin. A place where you can have freedom of thought. It's probably the last enclave on this planet that's free, really. You look at other countries, other places where new rules and regulations kind of like constrict people.
Why is that, though? Because the impression, perhaps, of Germany and the Germans from abroad is that they like their Ordnung, their order, and their... But it's not like that here in Berlin, is it?
Not in a day-to-day level, I don't think it's different, where it's like in industry, maybe, it's all very regimented. That's what makes it work, I suppose, But Berlin is a city. Berlin's not an industrial city, it's a cultural city. People say people who want to make money don't come to Berlin, really, because it's not that kind of money-generating city. Whereas,
is it also the capital of techno?
Absolutely,
I mean, some people would dispute that,
but they'd be wrong to dispute that because without Berlin, there would be no such thing as techno, really.
And did techno really happen after the fall of the wall?
Well, the seeds were planted before, you know, kids in Detroit, Jeff Mills and Derek May, people like that in Detroit, who were listening to German like electronic music, trying to kind of mix their own thing together. They kind of created what we know today as the kind of root of techno. But they didn't have any kind of success in Detroit and Chicago. They came to Berlin. And because of the wall, you know, we had a little scene before the wall came down of techno fans, a couple of hundred people, you know, who were interested in what this music...
Well, wasn't the first Love Parade...
In 1989.
Before the wall came down?
In July, yeah.
But we're talking 200 people.
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
Were you there?
Yes, I was
You were
there.
one of the 200?
Yeah, I went to it, yeah. And you know, we were just a little group of people having a bit of fun, you know. It's like, we had no idea how this was going to pan out.
But it turned into 1 million people,
The fall of the Berlin Wall was the most important factor for that, you know. Without the fall of the wall, it probably wouldn't have expanded like it did. And the reason being was because all these kids in East Germany and East Berlin suddenly could choose for themselves what they wanted to hear, what they wanted to do. And it was sex, drugs and techno, really. You know, it was like, here we had a lot of places which were suddenly free to utilise along the death strip, all these like derelict buildings, which could be have parties in. There were no rules and regulations. There were no police. All the rules, the East German rules, had all been thrown out the window. So people could just do anything. And it was like, we want to have a party, we want to take loads of drugs and have a great party on the death strip, you know. And that kind of transformed this. And it wasn't like, because East German kids weren't really tuned into listening to English lyrics or something like this. And techno had no lyrics. It was just banging music, and it was just like dancing, and it was doing all the things that you weren't allowed to do in East Germany. And for the Westerners, it was kind of like, yeah, we knew what it was about, so we could kind of organise it in a sense, and it kind of gelled really well, and that's what created this techno thing. And then other people coming from elsewhere, experiencing it for the first time, all these American DJs coming to Berlin to play in this club. Yeah. It was like, you know... And then you had a club like Tresor, which was on the death strip in a former safety deposit bank box thing, you know. It's like...
What do you think? I mean, I'm sorry, it's not really changing the subject, but I do want to show this very sweet picture of your mum. I wonder what your mum thought of all this at the time. Well, did she know what you were up to?
No.
Look, isn't that a beautiful picture of your mum?
My mother still doesn't know what she wants to, you know.
Well, because I actually really only showed that picture because I really wanted to show this picture.
Her offspring.
Is this... the eyes. How old were you then?
20.
Yeah, this is in Berlin, then?
Yeah.
Oh, OK, that's in Berlin.
Yeah.
But one more I want to show is of your house in Manchester, and the Sex Pistols poster there, which I believe a neighbour objected to.
Yeah, you can hardly see on that photograph, but on the next door neighbour's window, he's actually got a picture of the Queen. Yeah, it's for the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977. And I'd got this Sex Pistols poster and stuck up in my window, went out and took the photograph. I knew I didn't have long to do this, you know, and literally I put it up, and then the next door neighbour, he'd seen it. He was a royalist and, you know, he'd been in the Royal Marines. He called the police, and the police came and made my mum tell me to take it out the window immediately.
The police came and you had to take it back?
Yeah.
No wonder you left Manchester. I mentioned at the beginning of the programme that your phone book makes interesting reading. One person I want to ask you about, because I read somewhere that you persuaded Nick Cave to move to Berlin.
Yeah, amongst me and the girls from Malaria, we kind of sort of like... Yeah. Nick, actually, he'd come to play a gig in Berlin, played in the music hall in Steglitz, and he'd met this girl called Elizabeth Recker, who was actually from the unbekannten manager of the record label Monogram. And I think he was a bit kind of like smitten by her beauty, and he was like, oh, how can I get to Berlin? What's it like living in Berlin? And as we were on tour with the birthday party, he was constantly asking me, you know, like questions like, what's it like to live in Berlin? You know, how easy it's to live in Berlin. And I said, well, you just come, you know, just can come and stay in my flat for a while and see if you can find a flat, and that's exactly what he did. One morning I rang the doorbell and there he is standing with his suitcase.
Really? Yeah. Moving on musically, though. Musically, the one person perhaps you're associated with perhaps most of all, is Paul van Dyk, or as a lot of people say, Paul van Dyk.
Yeah.
But actually, in German, his name would be Van Dyk. He's originally from the East, isn't he?
Yeah, he's from Eisenhüttenstadt.
And he's now one of the biggest DJs in the world, most probably. And you nurtured his career for a long time.
Well, he came to me as a young, sort of 17, 18-year-old.
Yeah.
You know, he wanted to be a professional DJ, and I said, well, you know, I'll only do it if you're going to be the best DJ in the world. You know,
But did you see something in him then?
I did, yeah, of course, yeah. You know, I gathered, you know, I had another artist on my label. I'd created a record label after the fall of the war, which I called Masterminded for Success.
MFS.
Which was shortened to MFS. It was actually born out of the former East German record label called the Amiga, which was like the state-run record label of East Germany. Yeah. Now, I produced an album for them, the last album of the DDR, for a group called Division. And I met everybody who was involved in this kind of label. And when the wall came down, I said, well, now you can do something new, you know. So they said, OK, we have no idea what you're talking about. You do it, and we'll help you. You can use all our facilities. And so I created this label, Masterminded for Success, which I didn't tell them was going to be shortened to MFS, because I thought they'd get a bit upset about that, being East Germans. Because MFS actually means Ministerium für Staatssicherheit, which is the Stasi, right?
Now I'm with you. Oh, I see. That's the
I wanted to retain the letters, MFS. But I didn't know how I was going to do this without telling the East Germans, so I created Masterminded for Success as the name of the label, and then used the 3 letters as the abbreviation, to their horror, yeah? I thought it's a different kind of techno, a different kind of terror, you know, to the Stasi. Anyway, I had another artist called Cosmic Baby who was very prolific, and I thought, he's good, but his music he makes isn't DJ-friendly.
Yeah.
He needs a DJ.
And Paul van Dyk.
Paul van Dyk just happened to be a DJ one night in a club, and he said, I found someone who I think might be good. And things kind of went from one thing to another, and I decided, OK, he's got a bit of talent, this kid. He's got a focus, and I think if he's ambitious enough, he might go for it. I said, I only want the best. If you're not going to be the best, I'm not going to do it for you. Yeah?
Well, he's become one of the top guys in the world. But I wonder what you'll make of this. This is Paul van Dyk. This is high opera mixed with beats that I know you haven't seen, because you said before the programme, from the aforementioned Paul van Dyk.
It's Saturday night in Munich. The Bavarian State Opera is staging an open-air concert as part of the Opera for Everyone series. A big crowd gathered at the musicians' entrance, both opera fans and techno fans. The latter are here to see Paul van Dyk, the internationally acclaimed DJ. Tonight, he will be mixing club beats with the music of Giuseppe Verdi. The seats and loges are empty. The audience becomes the show, and the opera stage becomes the dance floor.
In a club context, it's really about moving and having fun. And I sample Verdi again and again to show how contemporary his work still is. But the show is very, very different, and it's a real challenge, too.
The 500 tickets available for the show were sold out shortly after the box office opened. The mood was relaxed and the people seemed to enjoy the concept. Paul van Dyk is one of Germany's best-known DJs. He's also a pioneer of electronic dance music. His career began on the Berlin techno scene in the 1990s. Since then, he's been taking his music on tour around the world. This isn't van Dyk's first classical experiment. In 2009, he worked with Estonian conductor Paavo Järvi in Frankfurt. During the show in Munich, electronic music is followed by classical interpretations of Verdi. Bavarian state opera singers are supporting Van Dyck's work.
It's brilliant. He's bringing young people into the opera house. That's usually hard to do. And DJs come along and say, this is a cool location. That brings young people out of the clubs and into the opera. And we get opera fans excited about techno beats.
Now, as I mentioned earlier in the programme, we've got Mark Reeder's latest album to give away. It really is hot off the press. He brought them in with him today. I haven't listened to it yet. It's still warm in my hand. Anyway, it's called Collaborator, and if you'd like the chance of winning it, just write to us at insight@dw.de, and you'll go into the draw for a lucky winner. Mark, tell us. I really don't know anything, except they're remixes.
Yeah.
Tell us more.
It's a kind of all the work that I've done as a kind of retrospective of like things that I've done, really. Like, there's a bit of my old school stuff, like the Unbekannten and Shark Vegas music on there, because the guy who runs this label really wanted that on. He wanted the Pet Shop Boys mix that I did, and there's a few new things that I've done, like the West Band mix I did with West Band and Bernard Sumner. I did the mix just for this album, and there's Marnie from Ladytron is on it, and yeah, quite a lot of Bernard Sumner things I've done, with Blank and Jones, stuff like that. It's a synthy pop record.
Is this the way? I mean, are you doing more music yourself nowadays? Are you?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is I worked a lot on DJs and running my record label MFS, and I got a bit bored with that really, because I thought I was putting too much into other people's careers, and I got asked to do these remixes, and it just kind of went, one thing went to another, and I've done quite a few in the meantime. Yeah.
So you stopped nurturing other people and you're doing your own thing?
I decided to go back to doing what I did before.
I did want to quickly ask you, I believe you're a big movie fan, and I read something, you actually starred in a horror movie. I haven't seen it.
Yes, I did. It's not really a horror movie, more a horrible movie. It's horrible in the sense that the subject matter's a bit kind of like controversial. Yeah? It's about a young lady who you actually know, although you probably don't know here. She's actually the star of the movie. Yeah? I'm just her sidekick, really, in the film. Yeah?
Are you going to tell us what the movie's called?
The movie's called Necromantic 2.
Necromantic 2.
And the subject matter is appropriately that. Okay. So that's why it's a bit controversial. It was banned. It was banned for about 20 years. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. All right. Now, we have a dossier or a file that we send out to people, especially people who've got a Stasi file. No, a questionnaire. And I do want to ask you about a couple of them. Your favourite German place you put down as, apart from your flat, Berlin's Museum Insel, and the mountains in Bavaria. Yeah. Do you go walking in the mountains in Bavaria? Oh, but you like it.
I like it.
Oh, right.
If I could, I would, but I don't.
Your wisest German you put down as Karl Lagerfeld. That kind of surprised me. Yeah. Why is that?
I think he's pretty hot on the mark. You know, he's seen a lot of things, and he's pretty. I like the way he talks. I like when he gives interviews. He's always really articulate, and I just like his image.
Yeah.
And he also likes to wear the same thing all the time, like me.
Yeah. And why do you? This is what I call a Mao jacket that you're wearing. That we see. I've seen you in many pictures. Is that? You're the same as Karl Lagerfeld.
I have a few. I like to wear this.
Yeah. Your favourite German word is Fahrradreparaturenwerkzeug, which is another classic word. We've had this a few times, of words that are sort of made up. They put them all together. How would compound words? How would you translate that?
Bicycle repair kit.
Oh, bicycle repair kit. Yes. Thank you very much. Now, the best-kept secret in Germany, we've got to get this one. Rudolf Hess was accidentally killed by an American GI, according to you.
Yeah.
Is this... we don't... Tell us about that very quickly. We've only got a couple of minutes to go.
A friend of mine who was in the US Army, he was a medic in the US Army, his roommate was on watch when Rudolf Hess tried to commit suicide, and he went to help Rudolf Hess. and in the process of giving him a heart massage, pushed his hands through his chest and killed him. And that was covered up by the authorities.
We cannot verify this on DW. I don't know that, but
you can't really. But
how do you know this?
Because my friend told me. He told me literally, quite literally, like 10 minutes after it had happened. Because my roommate had just killed Rudolf Hess, and then it came out in the press that he died. You know that Hess had died,
wow.
and he died of asphyxiation by trying to strangle himself. But in actual fact, the death was occurred because he crushed his sternum and pushed his hands through his chest.
Best thing about living in Germany, it's relaxing. And then the worst thing about living in Germany, do you remember what you said?
No, I can't remember.
No. It can be too relaxing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, because sometimes you don't get to the point you want to get to. Maybe sometimes I think I find Berlin like of all the places that I've ever visited, it's the most relaxing place to be, even as a kind of like bustling, exciting city.
And you say visiting, but this is Heimat or home for you, isn't it? You're not. Yeah, you're not going anywhere else.
Oh, I don't think I will.
No.
Not maybe I've not seen the rest of the world. I've seen quite a bit of it, but I've not seen all of it. You never know. I might find Alaska someplace.
Yeah. Well, it's been fascinating talking to you about Berlin and all that you've done here and the music scene here and everything. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Can I just remind everybody to write in again, insight@dw.de. If you're interested, you can just write to us and comment on the show. And you can go into the draw for Collaborator, Mark Reeder's latest album. It's a fascinating album, as you've mentioned, Pet Shop Boys, Bernard Sumner, Die Unbekannten, your band, are remixed as well, and Shark Vegas, and lots more. That's it from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the same time next week. Bye-bye.